say everyone has a story.
Has a story.
Has a story.
Story is truth.
My story is haunting.
My story is poetic.
I'm from the earth where it's green.
My story is bold.
Excellent first kill.
My story is resistance.
Our stories
Are ready to be told.
Hello, everyone. It's good to have you guys. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And as we bring you this rare opportunity all the way from Cambridge. So, but before I start bringing in our speakers for today, I just wanted to use this time to say one or few things about this program, why we actually are running this program, and why it is all about the University of Cambridge. So, but before then, I would like to introduce myself. I'm David Izogu. I'm a Cambridge Trust scholar here in Cambridge, and I'm running my PhD in computational chemistry. And I happen to be the founder of the platform that we are using to bring you this program today, which is the Africa of Our Dream Initiative. And before I say one or two things about the Africa of Our Dream Initiative, I would like my colleague, Chioma, to introduce herself.
Hi everyone. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what part of the world you're calling in from today. So my name is Chioma Achi, and I'm also a Cambridge Trust scholar. I'm a PhD student at the Department of Veterinary Medicine. And yeah, I'm glad to be here, and we're looking forward to an exciting conversation with all of us today. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Chioma. And like I told you, just to say one or two things about Africa of Our Dream Initiative, and then give you a program of what we're going to be doing today, the rundown, and then we can get started with everything. So like I said, one of the things, I founded Africa of Our Dream Initiative in 2017 after I arrived to Cambridge. And one of the reasons why we've done that is to use this platform to see how we can improve the life of others, right? And the goal of the foundation is actually to use education to empower future generation, especially those from Africa. So in order to do that, all we are now doing is to try to link up researchers from Africa and their counterparts in schools like University of Cambridge, Oxford, Imperial College, and what have you. And apart from the research component of that, we also try to get those minorities from Africa to dare those limits that they wouldn't ordinarily dare by supporting them, guiding them, mentoring them to pursue their dreams at universities like Cambridge and other top universities around the world. So today we've kind of decided that despite the fact that there is COVID, they are going to bring our usual annual program, which we always see us travel all the way down to Africa for an in-person program, trying to talk to people about opportunities and how they can leverage on the information that we have to grab those opportunities. So today, based on that, we are happy that an online program has given us the avenue to actually reach a wider audience. And today I have principal officers from the University of Cambridge, all the way from admissions to those who are decision makers in terms of scholarship, the various scholarship that we have at Cambridge, as well as those who are involved in the admission process. It's a two-day event, and tomorrow we'll be bringing in a core unique scholarship program that is meant for African students, as well as another person who is going to be speaking about the collegiate system, which is unique to Cambridge. And then later on, we are going to be looking at the experience that few African students who are on various scholarship here in Cambridge have gotten, and they'll be able to share their experience and their journey so far. The idea is that we hope that it's not all about sharing experience, because sometimes when you make applications to a school like Cambridge and you are successful and you want to share your experience, you might share the overall experience, but there are key things that might have worked in your favor to make you to be successful. And so to also have a view of what some of those key things are going to be, we decided to invite those who are in the process of judging your application and then being able to make decision on whether you are going to be successful for a particular scholarship, for a particular admission or not. So we think that this is a complete process that brings in those who make the judgment and people who have been successful to share their view, and then we'll be able to take your questions. So that is just a summary of the whole event. I will let Chioma to say one or two things. Chioma happens to be a trustee of Africa for Our Dream initiative, actually. So that is why she's here to kind of flag off this event with me. Chioma.
Thank you very much, David, and thanks to all who have taken time to join this program. I just remember during my undergraduate program, I really knew that I wanted to have my postgraduate studies outside the country. I really wanted to go to somewhere, a high-ranking university, but I just didn't know how. Like at that point, we didn't have access to a lot of information. We didn't know who to turn to for help. The information was online, but not as much as we do have now. And coming down to Cambridge for me has been a very good opportunity. It's been like helping me achieve my dreams. It's giving me a lot of platform. It sets the foundation right for me. And speaking to David on the Africa of Our Dream initiative, I think we both share the same experiences as well. And having gotten to this point where we are recipients of the Cambridge Scholarship, we thought that it would be wise, coming from the Africa of Our Dream initiative platform, to also have the opportunity of sharing these with other people. I know that they often say, if you want to hide something, put it in a book. But then when you have someone, you have people who have gone through that journey with you. You have people who have experienced such and they are bringing it to you. I think it makes a lot of difference. And that is one key area that Africa of Our Dream prioritizes. We want to see that we have people in the African continent that have access to information that would not be limited as a result of not knowing the next steps to take. We feel that education should be prioritized, and we feel that we owe it a duty to also give back to the society, helping those who ordinarily not have the opportunity of finding out what Africa of Our Dream initiative. And that is why I must also commend David and all the other trustees of AODI for bringing this platform forward. Of course, a month or two back, we had a program, a similar program, but not as big as this, for a lot of African scholars. And then we initiated the mentorship program. So if you're on this call and you need like mentorship, you need like one-on-one guidance on how to do your application after this, please log on to the website and follow the link, and we're going to add you to the Slack platform and tell you how to go about it. But yeah, the overall idea of this, just to summarize it all, is to be able to give back and to give people the opportunity of also having access to what we now have. Yeah, I'll stop there, David.
All right, thank you very much, Chioma. That's brilliant. So I think Chioma have said most of the things. All I have to say is just stick around. We have a whole lot packed down for you for today, and we hope that once you walk out of this place, you're not going to be the same, and you'll be able to dare those limits. Okay, so but before I move into what we have for today, I just wanted to say that it is key for you to kind of get updated with things that we are running. And one of the ways to do that is social platform. So try to follow us on our respective social media. Visit our website. If you want to get involved with us, we have a platform. If you're interested in volunteering, to have that volunteering experience, you can be a project facilitator. You can be just a volunteer to help us run most of the things that we want to be doing. You can also bring in your own initiative on how we can help improve lives around your own community, depending that whatever initiative you bring aligns with the aims and objective of the foundation. We'll be very happy to support them and then carry that on. Okay, so without wasting time, I'm going to bring in our first speaker. What we wanted to do is to allow all the speakers to speak and then have a question and answer section. However, because of availability, our first speaker, after speaking, we're going to just spend 5 minutes to take questions just for her, because she's got other engagements. She will have to run along. But then the other 3 speakers that we have to speak, and then we bring them together for a question and answer section. All right. So our next speaker is going to be Rachel. Rachel happens to be the head of student recruitment here at Cambridge, at the Cambridge admission office here in Cambridge. And so I'm happy to welcome Rachel, and I will give her the opportunity to introduce herself and then tell us what she's got.
So hello, thank you very much for having me this afternoon. Well, what's the afternoon here in Cambridge? It's really nice to be with you. So as we said, I'm the head of student recruitment and marketing at the admissions office here, and I'm hoping to spend about 15 minutes talking to you a little bit about what you might expect from the experience of studying at Cambridge, so what we've got to offer you as a postgraduate student, and then give you a bit of a run through of how the application process fits together for us. So I know you're going to have loads of different people who are speaking to you about different parts of the application process. So I hope this session is going to give you a bit of an idea about how that fits together and a bit of context for those sessions that are coming up. Just moving my slides on just a second. Okay, great. So I wanted to start with a little bit about why you might want to consider studying at Cambridge. So we hope you can get a really good academic experience from your studies with us. So Cambridge is a really highly ranked academic institution, but we've also got a great reputation for employability and for the teaching quality that you can expect at Cambridge as well. You can expect to be learning alongside other students who are really bright and motivated and really interested in your subject area as well. So you can expect a really diverse cohort and other students who you'll be learning alongside. So the academic experience at Cambridge is really intellectually challenging. We hope in a really good way where you can get a lot out of your studies with us. At Cambridge, you'll be learning from people and working with people who are real experts in their field, not just in the UK, but internationally. So there's lots of people who you can work with who really know their stuff and are really world leaders in their subject area. So are great people for you to be learning alongside and learning with throughout your postgraduate studies. Whatever it is that you want to do, we hope there are lots of options available to you for your postgraduate studies. So whether you want to do a course that's taught or whether you want to do something that's more research based, whether you're looking for something at a master's level or whether you're looking to do a PhD, there are lots of different courses that we offer at Cambridge, over 300, so way more than I can remember off the top of my head. But as you'll see at the bottom of this slide, we've got a link there to our course directory, which is a great place for you to start looking about the different courses that are on offer. You can do a keyword search in there, so you can start to get a bit of an idea about the kind of courses that are on offer for the things that interest you. At Cambridge, our postgraduates are Cambridge based. We have quite a big postgraduate student population, so around 9,600 at the moment, which is about half of the number of students that are at Cambridge. So we've got a really big postgraduate student population. Around half of our postgraduate students are actually international. So we've got a really diverse group of students who are studying for postgrad with us from over 140 different countries. So you can expect to meet lots of people from all across the world, but who are all really interested in their academic study and working towards a really good academic course. We'll support you throughout your postgraduate study, so you'll have access to a personal supervisor, but also lots of facilities that will help to support you to do your research or to learn more throughout your course. We get asked quite a lot about what kind of things postgraduates go on to do after their studies, and some of our postgraduate students will go on to further research or further study, but lots of our graduates go into the job market as well, and we've got a really good career service who can support you to decide what it is that you want to do next. So they advertise lots of vacancies, they have lots of employers who come to us to advertise the opportunities that they've got for students from Cambridge. Cambridge graduates are really well regarded by lots of graduate employers, so have lots of the skills they need to go into jobs in their area. If you're not too sure what you want to do, you can meet with advisors one-on-one, and they can help you to get a better feel for what you might want to do next, and also help you to develop some of those skills to write your CV or go into interviews. So the career service are really, really good to help you decide what it is you want to do next. At Cambridge, you'll also be a member of one of the colleges as well as your faculty or department. And your college is a much smaller community while you're studying at Cambridge. So there's lots of opportunity for you to get to know people in different subjects, maybe who are studying at a different level to you, and maybe academics in different subject areas. So it's a great way for you to network and really get to know a broader range of people. You'll also get some pastoral support through your college, so through your graduate tutor. And there's lots of opportunities to socialise in your college as well, so through things like meals and events that run through your college. I don't want to talk too much about colleges because I know that you've got Hannah coming tomorrow and she'll do a great job of doing that as well. But just to flag that at postgraduate level, some students will live in college, but lots of students will live in private accommodation in the city centre as well. So it's worth looking at how much accommodation is available in a college if that's something that you particularly want. As well as the academic side, you'll get lots of support through the Students' Union. So until last year, Cambridge actually had a separate Students' Union for postgraduate students, but now that's merged with our undergraduate Students' Union. But there are still dedicated postgraduate officers within the SU who are really looking out for your rights and representing you across the university. So who sit on lots of committees and really represent the views really well of postgraduate students here. Beyond your studies, it's still really important to make sure that you're getting that work-life balance, so get the opportunity to do some things beyond your academic studies. So at Cambridge, like at lots of universities, there are different clubs and societies that you can get involved with if you'd like to. So if you're interested in sport, there are quite a few different sports you can do and at lots of different levels. So if you're really good, there's some really good teams you can join. But if you're maybe just want to do it every now and then, there's lots of levels you can do that at. If sport's not really your thing, then you can get involved in volunteering and charity work. You can join societies, international societies, things based around media and performing arts. There's loads you can do. So hopefully there's something for everyone if you do want to do some things beyond your studies. As a city, Cambridge is also pretty safe and relaxed and easy to get around. And we're also quite close to London, so you can get over there really easily and also get to the main airports to get to travel internationally if you need to. That's a very quick run through about what you might find in Cambridge and what the academic experience is like. And now I want to give you a quick run through how the application process works and fits together. So when thinking about applying, the first thing we get asked about quite a lot by people we meet out and about is what the entry requirements are. So first thing is we're used to accepting qualifications from students across the world. So if you're not studying the same qualifications as students in the UK, that's absolutely fine. So for UK students, the minimum requirement is for students to be getting a 2-1 in their undergraduate course for most of our courses, but for some of them the requirement might be a little bit higher. If you're not really sure what that means for your qualification, the best place to go is to this quite long link on the slide, but which is where you can look at international qualifications and find out what the equivalent it is for the country that you're studying in. So once you've found a course that you're interested in, that's a good place for you to start looking. This is an overview of how the application process fits together. So there's 7 main steps, but I'm going to run through all of these one by one. So we'll touch on each of them as we go. First step is choosing your course. And main place to look is on the course directory. So this link at the bottom, but where you can search for the different courses that are available. And really those course directory pages are very in depth. So you can find out lots of information about key deadlines, the kind of entry requirements you might need for that specific course, and check all of the key information that you need around funding and course fees, etc. What's also really helpful for your course is for a lot of our courses, departments recommend that you get in touch with a prospective supervisor, and you can find a lot of that information on department websites and contact details to get in touch with them. And that's the case for a lot of departments, with the exception of law, who don't recommend that. It's really important for you to make sure you're aware of all of the key deadlines, because there's a few things that you need to keep in mind. So there's 2 main deadlines you need to look out for. One is the deadline for your course and the other is the deadline for funding. So at Cambridge, we have something called the Graduate Funding Competition, which I'm sure you're going to hear about in more sessions later. But if you want to be considered for funding that's available through that, then you need to apply by the funding deadline, which might be a bit earlier than your course deadline. Or occasionally it's the other way around, where your course deadline is earlier than the funding deadline. So just keep an eye out for both of those and make sure you apply by whichever is earliest. The other thing that's helpful to know is that at Cambridge, we look at applications on a rolling basis. So if a course fills up, there's a chance that the applications will actually close earlier than the deadline that we've got on the website. So just bear that in mind. So it's good to apply as soon as you're ready so that you can apply nice and early, and make sure that your application will definitely be in time before the course is full. Your application will be through an online application portal, which you can find on the course page for your subject area. Again, just keep an eye on those deadlines. To flag, there is an application fee. So at the moment, that's £65. But there are waivers available for students from certain countries or certain backgrounds. So if that's something you're aware of, then do get in touch with us. You'll need to submit a few pieces of extra information as part of the application process. Some of those things are subject specific, but some of them are a bit more consistent across all courses. So for all courses, you'll need to submit academic referees. Again, make sure you're thinking about this nice and early, because your academic references, you'll request them through the applicant portal and they need to be submitted before you can submit your application form. So make sure you ask your references in good time so that they can get them in ready for you to submit ahead of the deadlines. Again, as part of the process, you can submit a preference college. So it's the department who will look at your application to make a decision about whether to make you an offer, but you can also pick which college you might want to be a member of. So at postgraduate, the process is a little bit different than at undergraduate. But you can pick 2 preference colleges. Around 2/3 of people go to one of those 2 preferences. But if one of your 2 preferences can't accept you for any reason, then it will get sent to another college. So you'll definitely be accepted to one of the colleges if you've been accepted by the department. If you don't really mind, then you can make something called an open application. I'm really conscious of time, so I'm not going to linger too much on it, but that's basically where you don't really mind. So you'll get allocated to somewhere. And I'm sure Hannah will talk about it a little bit more tomorrow as well. So then the final couple of steps in the process are to submit your application. So again, just make sure you're really aware of the things you need to submit. So you'll need your references in there. Depending on your course, you might need to have put together a research proposal, and you'll usually need to upload a CV and an academic transcript, which might be an interim one if you haven't finished your studies yet. But just make sure you check the course page so you know all of the stuff that you'll need to put in there as part of the process. And then, so that's it, you've submitted your online application. And then the final step is that you might be invited to an interview. So again, it's a little bit different to our undergraduate. We don't necessarily interview all of the people who apply, but lots of departments will ask students to come for an interview as part of the process. That's very much around your academic studies, a discussion around that, your experience and your ideas. And usually that will be by telephone or by Skype. So we wouldn't usually ask you to come to Cambridge. There's usually other opportunities for us to meet you for that remotely. And then just final bit on what happens after you've applied. So if you're successful, you'll receive a formal offer admission by email. We had quite a few questions in advance about how we make decisions, but primarily that's on academic merit and your suitability for the course. So lots of that you will have been able to show throughout what you've submitted in the application process and maybe the interview. And then we'll also take into account whether a supervisor is available and if there's space on the course. As part of your offer, you'll usually have some conditions, so things that you need to meet by the time the course starts or by a certain deadline in order for your place to be finalised. So standard things are an academic condition, so a certain academic requirement you need to have got to get on the course. Financial, so demonstrating that you can meet the cost of the course. and you might have a language assessment that you need to do as part of that. So that will very much depend on where you're applying from and what your background is. But if you haven't studied in English before, or you live in a country where English isn't the first language, then you might need to submit a test, say something like TOEFL or IELTS, as part of your application, or go for an assessment at the language centre. There will be a deadline for you to meet those conditions, so check the website for the right one for that. And then once you've completed all of the conditions, that's when your place will be confirmed, and you can start to make all of the necessary arrangements to start your studies. So things like visas, which we can help with. That's all from me. This is the email address. So I know lots of you sent in inquiries that were quite specific. So if we don't get the chance to talk about them today, do get in touch with us and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
All right, thank you very much, Rachel. That's really brief and a very good overview of what the entire application process here at Cambridge is. Thank you very much for that. Actually, while we were trying to publicize this event, we've asked people to send in questions using a form. But I'm really sorry that we were actually overwhelmed by the number of questions that we received. Over 100 questions. And it's a pity that we won't have time to take all the questions. So I'm going to just, because of time constraint, take a few questions and look at those who are popping in 1 or 2 questions here and see if there are ones we can take, because we've got just 4 minutes to do that. So one of the questions that came on popping from the forms that they submitted, Rachel, is about the English language test. For instance, I'll read a typical question which says, do I need to submit an English language test, considering the fact that my instruction throughout my education career has been in English? Also, the official language of my country is English language. What do you have to say about that?
So as a broad overview, the English language requirement is dependent on where you're applying from. So again, there are lots of useful web pages, and one of them is the English language requirement one, where you can check what the standard is from your country. So it will tell you whether you're usually required to do IELTS or TOEFL, or in some cases, maybe just go to the language centre. So do check on there. It's difficult to answer this question without knowing the country. But if you check on there, that'll be the right place to look. If you are already studying English, or your first language is English and that's different to what the form's suggesting, then you can let us know. So just get in touch.
Okay, I think that's also corresponds to this, which someone as West Africa. Yeah, I think that also answers this question. But typically, I think most of the people who I see answering that, some of them are from Nigeria. What would you say about Nigeria in specific?
Oh, I can't remember off the top of my head. I would also need to check, because there's maybe 200 countries people apply from. So yeah, but that's the right place to look. I can share the link as well if it's helpful. Okay,
that's good. So let's look at another question. There's another one that kept on popping around here and there. Say, does any university in the UK use GRE as criteria for admission? If yes, I would like to know. Yeah, if you can, what do you think about this with respect to at least Cambridge? Yeah, I don't know if you have an idea about the entire university in the UK, but what about Cambridge?
Yeah, so I wouldn't like to comment on other universities in case I got it wrong, but at Cambridge, for a lot of our courses, we don't, but for some in economics, I think, and in the Judge Business School, you might need to have that. So there's a list. It's really clear on all of the course pages. It's 5 or 10 in each of those departments, but for other departments, no.
So just a follow-up question on this. I know, for instance, for the English requirement, you can actually submit the test score after you've submitted your application and you've been offered a conditional offer. Then that could be one of the requirements. Does that actually apply to GRE, or do you have to submit the GRE as you are submitting your application for those departments like economics?
I actually don't know the answer to this off the top of my head. I think usually it would form part of the condition, but best thing to do is to check with the department.
Okay, So one other question that kept on popping here and there, you say, for instance, a typical one of them is say, I was hoping to apply and see if I can secure funding, but I noticed that I needed to pay an application fee. Can the application fee be waived for me? And if yes, how can I benefit from a waiver?
Yeah, so again, it will depend on country or circumstance, but for quite a number of countries, there is an application fee waiver. So after the session, I can pop these links in the comments before I have to shoot off, so I'll pop them in there. But the application fee waiver is partly dependent on country or on specific circumstances. So there are a group of people who are eligible for a fee waiver, but you need to check on that.
So just a follow-up on that, I know that there are lists of countries which are termed economically low countries that automatically they qualify for that. But there are countries which probably they are developing countries, but they are not ranked as part of that group. If there is someone in those countries who really want to apply for this, how would the person go about it? Would the person have to write to you, to the graduate admission office before making an application? Because before you submit the application, you'll be required to make the payment. So how does that work?
So if you're from a country that automatically qualifies for the fee waiver, as part of the application form, it would just not ask you for that step, so you wouldn't need to make a payment or anything. So if you're eligible for a waiver, that usually is just part of the process, so you wouldn't need to make a payment or reimburse, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but for those countries that are not qualified, I think depending on circumstance, let's assume there is someone from Ghana or Nigeria who probably is not among the list, but this individual really wants to apply to Cambridge and he or she will not be able to meet up with the application fee, and he will be able to actually show that, yes, this is his situation. How would this person go about it?
So I think at the moment it is only a waiver for those countries or those specific circumstances which are on the website. So I think if there were particular circumstances, get in touch. But I think at the moment we can only guarantee for those ones.
Okay. All right. So the next question, we are already running over time. So let me just ask this one more question and then we can move on to the next. Yeah. How would COVID affect student recruitment for 2021 start, especially for science students who would be needing the lab and therefore physical presence to do their research?
Yeah, so this is a really good question. And obviously it's really difficult to know where we'll be in a year's time. But at the moment for this year, we're planning for students to be in Cambridge and to still be able to do a lot of that work in labs. There'll be things in place. So we need to make sure we're looking after students, and keeping everyone safe is the most important thing, but still giving you those opportunities to do that. So labs are open and those classes are happening, but with more measures in place and things like social distancing. Some of the teaching, so some classes and learning will be online. So things like big lectures are likely to be online for a lot of this year. As long as that's what we need to do to keep it safe. So some of that might still be in place next year, but obviously we don't really know at this point because it'll depend where things are with the pandemic.
All right. Okay, so guys, I'm really sorry. We have to stop here for Rachel because we're already running over time. Thank you very much, Rachel. It's really good to have you. I hope that what you've shared with us has been informative and it's been clear to people how to go about all of this. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. And David, if I put those links in the chat, will you see them?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so our next speaker is Rachel. Rachel happens to be the graduate student coordinator here in my department, the Department of Chemistry here at University of Cambridge. So actually, the reason why we've brought Rachel is for Rachel to kind of give us an overview of what admission process is like with respect to department. Okay, so Rachel is going to be doing that. and using chemistry as a module. So Rachel, you're welcome.
Thanks, David. Thanks. I'm Rachel MacDonald. As David said, I'm the Graduate Administrator in the Department of Chemistry. I've tried to keep this fairly general so that hopefully it's not too chemistry specific, but anyway, here we go. So welcome, everybody.
Yes, somehow, Rachel, sorry, your slide is kind of dark. I don't know if you can make it. We can't see your slide.
You can't?
Dark. No, we can't. If you are using two screen, it's possible that the presentation mode have gone. Yeah, we can see it now. Let's go to presentation.
Is that better?
Yeah. No, I think what is happening is that your presenter view is different from the presentation itself.
Okay, so
are you using two screens?
No, I've only got one screen, I'm afraid. Can I go through? Is there any way we can go through like this?
Yeah, I guess we could. This happened when Jim was testing his. I don't know how he did it. Okay, can you try again? Let's see.
Play from the start?
Yes.
Is that still dark?
Yeah, it's still dark.
Is it better if I do it this way?
Yeah, I think we can go this way then.
Okay, sorry about that. Right, so basically what I wanted to say, my main point is that the key to a very good application is research, research, and more research. There is not enough research that you can do to make your application absolutely perfect. First thing you need to decide is what course is right for you. So you need to think about lots of things. Do you want something that's entirely taught? Do you want something that's part taught, part research? Or something that's entirely research? Obviously, they're very different things, and we offer all of those options in different departments. And the other thing to say is the subject area. So you might think that you know the subject area is, say, physics or chemistry, but you need to look around because there will be other courses that overlap. Some of the courses are interdisciplinary, so it's worth having a good look at what's available, and don't just assume that you only need to apply to one department. There may be something better in a different department. So the course directory, Rachel mentioned this, and this is what you will see when you go on the page, and you have the option to enter keywords. So this is a good way to find courses specific to the area that interests you. You can indicate the level that you want to study, so master's, doctorate, and whether you want it to be taught or research. When you click on the page for each different course, and obviously here's chemistry, they will give you a number of different tabs that you can select. So the overview will give you a kind of idea of what the course is about, what taught components there might be, if there's any assessed component, if there's coursework you need to do. The requirements are the key one that you'll need to know when you're starting your application. So this will be your academic requirements, and they will indicate on the page for the course you're interested exactly what they are. And I would bring to your attention the panel on the right-hand side, because this will give you links to the departments. It will give you links to the course on the website at the department, and they're useful things to check. You also have the option of looking at what you need for finance, how to apply, and there are deadlines down the right-hand side as well. So are you eligible to apply? Obviously, the first one of those is the academic requirement, and this will be different for every course. So do check on the course directory, and the email for that is the website address for that is there. The language requirement, obviously this is a question that a lot of people have been asking. You do not need to meet the language requirement in order to apply. However, you will need to demonstrate that you have English language proficiency in order to be admitted if you are made the offer of a place. So again, Rachel's mentioned this previously, there's a really useful page on the Graduate Admissions Office website where you can put in what your nationality is. It will ask you where you've previously studied, and it will give you an indication of whether you would need to undertake a language assessment or not. And obviously at the moment with COVID, it's quite difficult to do these, but there are a number of things that are available online, and I suspect that may continue for some time. So what additional documents will you require? Again, check the course directory, as they will all have different requirements, but most courses will want to see your academic transcripts. So this is the breakdown of the grades you've achieved during your studies. And I might want to stress here that we're only really interested in your undergraduate transcripts or your master's transcripts. We're not interested in anything previous to that, so no high school transcripts or anything like that. We will need the names of 2 academic references, and these should be people that can comment on your grades, that have worked with you recently and that know you well and can actually comment on what your research potential is, and whether you've got original ideas, what your enthusiasm is like, and your academic potential. CV is another requirement for most courses, and my advice would be to make sure it's consistent with your application, because sometimes we find that things on the CV don't match with what's on the application form. So be honest and be consistent, and make sure it's clear, and any gaps that look weird or seem to contradict what you said in the application, people will question that. So for example, we often find that students who've done research placement at Cambridge might indicate that they've done a degree at Cambridge, but they actually haven't. So be honest. If you've done the degree in Nigeria, put it in Nigeria. If you've attended a placement in Cambridge, put that in your CV and make sure that's really clear, because otherwise it can be misleading. You may also require to upload a research statement or proposal. So this will depend again on the course directory. Now in chemistry, we don't request a research proposal. And this is partly due to the fact that you would be joining a group where the research is kind of ongoing. So you're fitting into something that's already happening. But I would suggest that you do think about writing what's interesting to you, because if you are applying for some of the funding, you will need a research proposal. And we do ask for a research statement as part of your application. And this is quite important to help identify whether you're applying to the right course, to the right supervisor. Other courses might require a sample of written work. And again, this is just to show really what you're capable of and give people an idea of what you can do. So the research statement or research proposal, as I've said, this is critical information to help departments assess whether there is a suitable supervisor to work with you. If you're doing a longer research proposal, things you might want to think about including are what you know about what work has already been done, so your familiarity with that. Put in an original idea of how you might progress this work further. Show that you understand the methods that you would employ to test this thing that you're interested in studying. And think about the sort of data sets you would need to gather or use to test your ideas. And one other important point, be realistic and achievable, because the project you'll only have a very short time to do. So think about what you might be able to do in, say, a 1-year course or a 3 to 4 year course. And think about that carefully and plan it. And this is a really good piece of document, if you like, that you could send to a prospective supervisor, even if you don't need to actually upload a research proposal as part of the application. So how do I find a prospective supervisor? The first thing you need to do, again, check the directory, go to the department website and find the supervisors that are involved with the course that you want to apply for. One of the things we do have often happening is people apply to the wrong department and the supervisor they've named is actually in a different department. And this again can happen when there's a sort of an overlap. So commonly we might get applications to chemistry asking to work with someone in biochemistry. So do your research and think carefully. Look at the research profiles of the academics associated with the course you're interested in applying for. Familiarise yourself with their key publications, because these will be the people that will be reviewing your application almost certainly. And then another thing to think about is, are there other academics working in very closely aligned fields who might also be a good supervisor? We find very often that there might be a very big named academic and they get lots and lots of applications in, but they may have a more junior colleague who doesn't get so many applications, but who equally could be a fantastic supervisor in that area. So think strategically. Should you contact a prospective supervisor in advance? We do recommend that you do this. If you do, you should focus your email contact and aim to engage the interests of the academic. All academics are incredibly busy. So you need to engage their interest, because chances are if you just send a general email or saying, I'm interested in doing a PhD with you, they're not going to respond. So send them a CV, send them some ideas, engage with something that perhaps they've published and ask them a question about it, but you need to engage their interest. And whatever you do, do not send a generic email to all the academics listed on the department website. This is never a good plan. It does happen occasionally. I've even received emails asking to come and work in my research group, and I'm not a chemist, so it doesn't look good. You need to research your application and make it focused. One good thing about contacting a prospective supervisor in advance is they'll be looking out for your application. They'll also be able to confirm whether or not they're recruiting for that year. And this is another area where we sometimes have problems. So you might look on the department website and think, oh, I'm really interested in working with that person. But actually, that person isn't recruiting. And usually on the department website, it does indicate this. But one other way you can check is by contacting them and saying, I'm really interested. I've seen this article you've done. Would you be interested in doing a PhD? And they might respond and say, I'm really sorry, I'm on sabbatical next year, or I'm going to be retiring, so I'm not recruiting anymore. So it's worth checking that by communicating with them. The other thing is that supervisors can help you develop your research proposal. Again, like in chemistry, where we don't actually require a research proposal, but you might need one if you wish to be considered for some funding. Supervisors can have a discussion with you and talk about the sorts of things you're going to be doing if your application is successful, and help think through the various stages that you would need to use. So what if they don't respond to your email? Then I would definitely send a reminder, but only do it once, because they're very busy. And if they haven't responded the first time, that might be just oversight. If they don't respond after the second one, they're probably not going to. If they don't reply, that's fine. Apply anyway, but don't just list this as your only prospective supervisor. Have alternatives in place. So when you come to submitting your application, start your application early. Don't leave it to the last minute. It's an online form, and you can start it and save it and keep updating it. And that's probably a good thing. Make sure you take your time, think it through carefully, get it ready. The key points to remember are the funding deadlines, and these will be course specific. So you'll either have a funding deadline in December or in January. So check the course you're interested in. Make sure your academic references have been submitted by the funding deadline. So when you start your application, you can ask for emails to be sent to your referees, asking them to upload their references, and do that as early as possible. You will know once they've been submitted. You won't be able to see them, but you'll know they're there. And you need those in order to submit your final application. So once your application is complete and you've submitted it and it's been downloaded by the department, it will be marked as under consideration. So departments will review applications in one of two ways: on a rolling basis as they are submitted, and some, as chemistry does, will look at them as a gathered field. So you might submit your application to chemistry on October the 1st, say, but we have, basically because we look at them as a gathered field, we don't look at everything until they've all been submitted by the funding deadline. So we look at the whole cohort of people applying meant to be considered for funding. So don't be surprised if there's quite a long delay between being under consideration and having a decision. Obviously, on a rolling basis, it's probably a good idea to get them in as quickly as possible because places will fill up. Gathered field, as I say, we tend to do it with the funding deadline, but after that, we would then review them on a rolling basis. And we don't tend to get that many coming in after the funding deadline. So for most courses, the decision to shortlist an applicant is a purely academic one. So we're looking for good grades, academic prizes, strong academic references, research experience that you might have had, and any research publications. So make sure that's all in your CV. It's all really important. Interviews. So the interviews are usually done via Skype. So they might be with your prospective supervisor. They might be with a couple of other academics. Some people might use a panel of academics. And it's sometimes you may be asked to give a short presentation on something you've been involved with, some research you've done. And this is a great opportunity for you. So be prepared to showcase what you have done and what you know. Try to anticipate the sorts of questions you might be asked so that you're prepared to answer them. And they will be trying to test the limits of your current knowledge, and they will push you, but that's okay. They will push you as far as they can, and that might be far enough. So if you come to a point where you don't know the answer, say, I really don't know the answer to that, I'm sorry. Be prepared to discuss some of the ideas you may have put in your research proposal. And if you don't know something, be honest, say so, and don't try to bluff your way through, because academics will know. If your interview has been successful and your prospective supervisor wishes to offer you a place on the course, the application status will change to Department Accept. Your application will then be checked by the degree committee who oversees your course, and this is really to make sure we've done our job properly and we haven't made any mistakes about your academic requirements and so on and so forth. The Graduate Admissions Office will then make you a conditional offer of a place. And at that point, your application will then be forwarded to your first choice college or put into the allocator for you to get a college allocation. So the most common causes of applications being rejected are an incomplete application. Now, this is changing this year because now you can no longer submit an application if you haven't got your academic references. So this was a very common problem in the past. So if there's anything that you need to upload and you haven't included it, that could be a problem. So it will slow things down. So make sure everything is there, that you've uploaded everything you need, and that your academic references have been submitted before you can go ahead and submit. Another common cause is not meeting the academic requirement for entry. Now, this shouldn't be a problem if you've checked. So be sure, check the course requirement, see what the requirement is for entry. And as I mentioned, the graduate admissions page have a really good way of checking to see what those requirements would be in terms of the country you're coming from. The other biggest and most common failing is having a poorly focused application. So you might put in an application, say, I'm really desperate to come and do a PhD, I'm really interested in X, Y, Z, W. But if you haven't actually said, this is what I'm interested in, it's going to be very difficult for people to find you a suitable supervisor. So having a focus is really crucial. And if you've looked and done your research and discovered that the best people in the world doing research in the area you're interested happen to be at Oxford, you probably shouldn't be applying to Cambridge. So that's really key. So you have to have a good match with your research interests with prospective supervisor. Another one, as I've mentioned, is applying to a supervisor that's not recruiting for some reason. So again, check, do your research. Applying to work with a supervisor based in a different department is another problem, and I've mentioned that previously. Now, in the ideal world, graduate administrators like myself will spot these, will find out whether the academic that you've applied to works and transfer your application. When it gets very busy, sometimes I don't know if it happens all the time, and I personally always try to do this, but it might not be obvious where that academic is. And I've even seen people apply to academics that are based in other universities, and obviously that's just not going to work. So be careful, do your research. Finally, of course, interview performance. It's very tough. You'll get asked lots of tough questions, and academics might have 10 really outstanding applicants, and they may only be able to offer places to 5 of those. So it's all, be prepared, do your research, and hopefully everything will go well. So top tips: understand the requirements of your course before you apply. Familiarise yourself with the academics involved with that course and their research interests. Check department websites and find contact details for the course administrator. They can often be a really good source of information. They might be able to tell you if an academic's not recruiting, if you can't get a response from an academic. They might be able to prod things or tell you where things are in the process. So they're quite a good ally to have. So do find out who they are. There's also some postgraduate admissions and department open day events taking place. The Department of Chemistry has something happening on the 5th of November this year. So look on the websites. It may be possible that you'll have an opportunity to attend another virtual event where you might be able to see academic talks, you might be able to see lab tours, you might have a chance to see everything that's been going on in the department. And there are things planned, so check the websites and see. Obviously, they tend to be quite early in the year because of the funding deadline. So do check and do come along, because they'll hopefully be really interesting. Make sure your application is clear, consistent, and focused. That's really crucial, as I've said. And submit the complete application before the advertised deadlines. And basically, good luck. Hopefully we'll be seeing you in Cambridge before too long. Thank you. Thank you, David.
Thank you very much, Rachel. That was wonderful. That was really succinct, straight, and I think all the contents that we need are there. So like I said before, what we are going to do is speak or allow all the speakers to speak, and then we'll bring out the question and answer section at the end of it all. So thank you very much. We really appreciate Rachel. So next we are going to bring in our next speaker, Helen. Helen happens to be the director of what I would term the largest scholarship body here at Cambridge, with probably over 100 partners. So it's an enormous task that she's been doing, like trying to navigate the whole thing. So I'm going to kind of play a video clip and use that to introduce our next speaker. Okay, Helen, it's good to have you. So I'll guess I'll just let you have the audience and then speak to us.
Thank you very much, David. I'd like to start by thanking you and Chioma for hosting this event. It's a wonderful opportunity to connect with prospective students from Africa and the wider world. I'd also like to thank those of you listening as prospective students. There's a lot going on in the world at the moment, and to give this time to think about your future is very valuable. So thank you very much for joining us. I can tell by the questions I've seen in advance that you're a very engaged audience, and I'd really like to thank you for sending some of the questions in. Also, I'd like to thank Rachel for really an absolutely wonderful presentation just before me. It was an incredibly useful description of the pathway you have to go through before a successful application to Cambridge. I think what I was reminded about in listening to Rachel is that it's a very active process. Applicants are required to engage with the university to a fairly significant degree before even getting a place there. And so I really like to take that as a starting point to give you a bit of an indication about what it's like to study or conduct research at Cambridge. It is an active process. I think that I describe the learning as not necessarily being taught what to learn, but how to learn. So it's a place where the initiative, we expect the initiative to come from the students very often. And the reason for this is that Cambridge believes that in addressing the world's global problems, the widest range of perspectives is necessary. And that means the perspectives of the students, as well as the academic staff and others who are part of the wider network of Cambridge, and also its alumni, which is a very significant network and community throughout the world. Some of your questions that I've seen in advance are about how does Cambridge view applicants from developing countries, from African countries, and I mean the factual way is very like any other application. But I think I'd like to just stress here that we do particularly welcome applications from African students and from developing countries. And why is this the case? Well, you've already heard about Cambridge's great standing in the world as one of the best research universities. You've heard from Rachel Cox about research being good, doing good for the whole of society. That is directly referencing the university's mission statement, which is to contribute to society through the pursuit of education, learning and research at the highest levels of excellence. And I think that in order to do that, Cambridge needs perspectives from all over the world, and in particular, including Africa and developing countries. Some of your questions do sort of start to point out that perhaps joining from Africa or developing countries, students may in fact have to fight a bit harder for their places, prove themselves a bit more. I'm not sure about that, but I know that successful applications from African students are very valuable. Why are they valuable? Well, research in any area needs to have connections with other subjects, other perspectives. Research is about pushing the boundaries of knowledge, of going a bit further. And it's impossible to do that with a narrow perspective, or with people who've only ever worked in one particular place. So we need a global perspective. I'm speaking at the time of a global pandemic. It's a pandemic which is common to all our countries. It's present in all our countries, and yet the consequences and the response in each of our countries has been very different. How to confront a global question like combating a pandemic and making the world safe again needs the perspectives of those different countries. It also needs the perspectives of different academic disciplines. There has rightly been a renewed emphasis on the importance of scientific, of biomedical research. The search for a vaccine is very important. But to forget what history has taught us about pandemics would be a mistake. Possibly has already been a mistake. Had we thought more about the 1918 flu, perhaps we would have been better prepared. Also, the humanities are important in looking at cultural impact of the pandemic and economic impact of the pandemic. Why am I mentioning this? It's because research at Cambridge is done in an interdisciplinary way. Rachel mentioned the fact that you might want to look in more than one department to find people who are interested in your particular line of inquiry. That is very common in Cambridge. The questions will be treated across different departments, and the collegiate system makes sure that people are regularly in contact with people doing work in different disciplines. You're going to hear tomorrow about colleges, and the colleges bring people together, whatever subject they're studying or researching, and creates a community outside the formal academic environment, but one which actually does play a very important part in advancing academic inquiry. Many important discoveries have emerged over informal discussions between academics in informal settings, and such as the college dining table. So I'd like to give you that impression of Cambridge being very open to diverse points of view. I think that the thing that I've been asked to particularly address, quite rightly by David right at the front, is what makes a successful application. I mean, you've already heard actually how challenging it is to gain an offer of admission at the university. What about funding? And I'm very well aware, as director of one of the largest funding bodies that give money to postgraduate students, that actually funding is a key to unlocking the doors to Cambridge as almost as much as the successful application. I mean, obviously you can't have one without the other, but just getting the offer of admission is not enough to enable all students to come. So the good news about Cambridge is that there are many scholarships available to help postgraduate students. The Cambridge Trust is a charitable foundation founded 30 years ago specifically to help international postgraduate students come to Cambridge, and particularly those that didn't have the financial means to do so. We are particularly interested in enabling people to come who wouldn't normally think of coming. So the successful application which will attract a scholarship is often the same as the criteria that have been outlined by Rachel about a strong application. The primary criteria for any scholarship is academic. So having the strongest possible application in academic terms, with all of the components that Rachel has mentioned, the references, the complete documents, the good grades on previous degrees. That is all absolutely fundamentally important to a funding application. The other thing in common with applying to the university is that for funding, a degree of research is also necessary. The good news I've mentioned is that there are plenty of scholarships available. We are collectively trying to make it as simple as possible for applicants to access fund by grouping scholarships under different umbrellas, and also making information about scholarships available as far as possible through a single new portal in the postgraduate admissions part of the website. I'm going to admit that we haven't fully managed to capture the complete picture. So I do know that people are interested in how can they find out about every single scholarship available. But what I can tell you about the basic what we're trying to do is to create an umbrella which captures as many funding opportunities as possible. So the Cambridge Trust offers a great number of different scholarships. We would award about 500 scholarships a year. Those are almost entirely to postgraduate students. Mainly they are full scholarships, by which I mean that they would pay the university fees and the living expenses of the student. They vary slightly. There are some premium scholarships which might offer travel, for example, or a research allowance to allow people to go to conferences. But most of ours offer the fees and the living expenses. We do offer some partial scholarships. I know I've been asked about that. Those can be of varying amounts. Some of them perhaps might offer the fees only, and the student is responsible for funding their living expenses. It's important that you have all the funding in place before you start. You will be asked as part of the application to provide a financial guarantee. That is a guarantee that the funding is in place, either in the form of a scholarship or private funds, before you start. Once you start, it's very difficult to get significant funding. Once you start, the only funding available is for hardship. That is to bail out people whose circumstances have suddenly changed. So I would like to stress that, and I have been asked about that. So important. Why is it important? It's important because every year many students are turned away, many applicants are turned away. And if you sign a financial undertaking and you don't have the funds in place, you've come to the university, and you're not, if you don't have it in place, you're not going to be able to finish, and it's like a wasted place. Much better, if not successful, is to wait a year and reapply. And there's never any prejudice against people doing that. It's quite common. But I would like all of you listening to be able to do a successful application first time round. So what would you do? Well, once you have decided importantly on what you're going to apply for. And I can't help I absolutely emphasize all the points that Rachel mentioned about the type of postgraduate course that you might apply for. I'm going to add, she gave a lot of really useful information about how to interrogate the Cambridge websites, Cambridge structure to find a potential supervisor. Now, I'd like to add a recommendation to look also more widely at information sources. So at the university where you are now, are any of your professors linked in any way to their colleagues in Cambridge? Because that's another way of creating a connection with people. Those people where you are locally, they may know more about the research interests and the capacity to take on students than you may be able to glean from the website. Do both. But if you have the opportunity to talk to anybody who's been to Cambridge or who works with their counterparts in Cambridge as an academic, please approach them. The other thing is, approach them even if they work in a different subject area, because what I've just said about the emphasis on working between disciplines at Cambridge is very strong. So if you're a chemist but you know that the history professor is a graduate of Cambridge at your university, talk to that person. They may have helpful connections to make. So I like to add that to what Rachel said. So funding. On your form, your graduate application form, you will be asked, would you like to apply for funding? And you will be given a few options. It's quite simple. And somebody's asked, how do I know which scholarship to apply for? You apply for everything you're eligible for. So on the form, you'll be asked if you require funding. You must indicate that. And then indicate that you'd like to apply for everything. I've got a colleague from the Gates Trust speaking after me. There is absolutely no problem to apply both to Gates programme and the Cambridge Trust scholarships. You must do both. And then the different scholarships available are described on the Cambridge Trust website and the university's postgraduate funding portal. Some of the scholarships you will be considered for automatically if you are eligible, and some require a separate application. Typically, the ones that require a separate application might have an external partner that requires a separate application, or be a particular specialist fund held in Cambridge. But you can find out that information by looking on the websites. The Cambridge Trust, as David said, so we're an endowed foundation, so we have some of our own funding. We receive some funding from the university, we receive it from colleges, departments, and importantly, we receive it from external partners. These might be governments, they might be other trusts and foundations. The majority are other trusts and foundations. They might be individuals. And they might be alumni groups. So there's probably a high contingent here from Nigeria. And I'd like to say that the Oxford and Cambridge Society of Nigeria has collected a fund to help one student. And from Kenya also, the Oxford and Cambridge Society of Kenya contributes every year. So those are the type of partners that the Cambridge Trust works with. This means that our assessment sometimes requires additional criteria that the partner might need. For the majority of our scholarships, we use the information that you provide on your graduate application form to determine what you are eligible for. But it can be very helpful if you look through the range of what we have available and indicate what you think you're eligible for. There are 1 or 2 scholarships, for example, which are reserved for people from particular regions of the world. And it's not always obvious from the application form if you're from that region, for example. I can give you some examples of scholarships. So the Cambridge International Scholarship is a full scholarship available to the best international candidates for PhDs in any subject across the whole university in any year. Rachel referred to admission being subject to a gathered field. This is how scholarships are awarded. So, and that's why the deadline for application is very important. So at a certain point, we have all the applications in and they are assessed across the board so that the scholarships go to the people who most merit it on academic grounds. And also we have funds which also benefit those who have particular challenges, such as a financial challenge. So there's a combination of both things that we might take into account for most scholarships, and we gather the field before making the assessment. This does mean there's a bit of a wait, so you will most certainly hear that you've got an offer of admission before you hear about the funding, and that is because there's a secondary process after admission which assesses those most in need and deserving of funding. So so the examples: Cambridge International Scholarship, so that's to anybody, any nationality. We also have scholarships which are reserved for people who are from particular parts of the world or focusing on particular areas. That is because sometimes we receive external funding from funders who have particular interests. So I mentioned the Oxford and Cambridge Societies in Kenya and Nigeria. They are reserved for people from Kenya or Nigeria. Sometimes we might reserve a scholarship because of a particular objective that we would like to advance. We offer a Cambridge Africa Scholarship, which Caroline Trotter will say a little bit more about tomorrow. And that is has been introduced and is funded entirely from Cambridge sources. And it is to promote Cambridge's connection with African researchers and to build research capacity in Africa. That's reserved for students from Africa whose research has a bearing on the social or economic development of the region. And that's the criteria. And we also work with governments. The Chevening programme and the Commonwealth Scholarship Commission also work in partnership with the Cambridge Trust. That means that there are more scholarships available under both of those programmes at Cambridge, and both support a significant number of African students each year. Both of those programmes support master's students, by the way. So there's a range of things available. You have to do a bit of research, but there is, and please do, and please look at what you're eligible for, try and indicate it on the form. But we also do as much work as we can to make sure that all the applications for all those students who need funding are considered for the scholarships for which they are eligible. People have asked, are students bonded? So this refers to obligations that a student might have if they have received a scholarship. No Cambridge Trust scholarships have any requirement other than to try do as well as you can while you're at Cambridge, and we really hope that you take maximum advantage and hopefully go on to flourish in the rest of your career when you leave. Some of our partners have additional conditions for good reason. Most government funded scholarships require students to return to their country. This is because the reasons that governments fund scholarships is to build capacity in their own countries. If you don't return, they can't do that. So before accepting a scholarship, if it's offered from the Cambridge Trust, we will tell you if there are any additional terms and conditions, such as return to country, which is common, sometimes under the additional leverage of a bond being required. But we will make that clear. Please think about those conditions before you sign up for that. You think about your own long-term goals. Can you live with that condition? Because they are real. That it's extremely difficult to appeal them afterwards if you find that you can't meet the condition. So that is that was another thing that was asked. I mean, I think that yeah, I would like to, yes, also, I must say, I've probably got a very wide range of interests on this call. And I would like to say, look outside Cambridge as well for information and ideas. The British Council have a lot of information about funding opportunities. I do hope you choose Cambridge. There is so much to recommend studying at Cambridge. But I think that I do absolutely agree with Rachel. No university gives everything. I mean, it's unbelievable the wide range of things you can study at Cambridge. If you feel like actually you've researched Cambridge, it's not for you, look at another British university, and the British Council will also be able to help direct you in that way. And they may also have local funds in your country that might help you. They have some funds which might be available to study anywhere in the UK. Those kind of things. If you look in your own country, that might be of interest. There may also be foundations in your own country that might help you with the costs of study. They might also just help you with the costs of applying. I've had a question about application fees, or in the cost of additional things like travelling to Cambridge. So look very widely for funding sources as well as at Cambridge. I do hope that you'll be successful. Wish you the best of luck. I am available with my team after this event to give you further advice. And one of my team members is actually listening in now, Tendai Kariwo, and she's in charge of the Trust's partnerships. So yeah, David referred to the scope of my job. It is quite wide, but I'm only able to do it because I have a really good team behind me, and Tendai manages all the partnership agreements. And so it's very up on what we're offering each year with our partners to prospective students. Well, I'll leave it then. I'll really look forward to the questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you really so much, Helen. I feel a bit relaxed right now because I've been wondering how I'm going to take up more than 120 questions. And you've done justice to a whole lot of those questions. So thank you really big. So yeah, like I told you people, we are going to bring back Helen and the other speakers at the end of the next speaker. And then we'll be able to correlate all the questions that are left. But the good thing is that all the speakers who have spoken now have now tried to touch the hundreds of questions that you guys sent. So I'm really pleased with that. Thank you very much, Helen. All right, so like I said, the next person we are bringing on board is Jim. Jim Smith is the program director of probably call it the most prestigious scholarship at Cambridge. You won't be wrong if you say that. And so he'll be talking about Gates Cambridge Scholarship, what you need to know about it. Okay, so I will give the floor to Jim to kind of tell us what he's got about that. Jim, I think you are muted.
I am muted and now I'm not. Apologies. So just can I check you can see the slides okay? Are they all right?
Yes, they are great.
Great, perfect, wonderful. Well, just a few thank yous. I'm going to put my time on so I don't run over. Just a few thank yous. First of all, David and Chairman, thank you so much for this initiative and your leadership on it, and bringing us all together. This is really excellent format, and I'm thrilled to be part of it. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in. It's the questions are really impressive and enormous, and as Helen said, you're all very engaged, so it's great to see that. I will try and answer some of those. I'm not sure I'll get around to as many as Helen did. That's very impressive, but I'll do what I can. Also, a quick thank you to all the previous speakers. It's actually a real joy for me to kind of present this now, because a lot of the things that I was going to say have already been said really eloquently, so I can just sort of touch on them, and hopefully everyone's sort of picked up what everyone said beforehand on some of these really important points, particularly how to make that best application. So this will be somewhat of a whistle-stop tour of the Gates Cambridge scholarships. So I'll whiz through this, hopefully at a pace that is not too slow or too quick, and then but be available for questions afterwards. So just some basics quickly. We are the Gates Cambridge Scholarships is fundamentally a full cost scholarship program for postgraduate degree in any subject at the University of Cambridge, and that's important because I think it's really important to realise this is a very open program. It's not. We do have computer scientists, it's true, but they're not all computer scientists. So we have everything from Anglo-Saxon to zoology. So any degree at Cambridge offers, you can apply for a Gates Cambridge scholarship for that degree, as long as it's a postgraduate degree. We've just left the teenage years. We are now sort of this October hitting the grand age of 20, so we'll be celebrating despite the pandemic. We'll do a few extra things in the coming year. We'll have our 20th class coming next month, so that's very exciting. And this came in from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, so that's the name, and that's where it came from. And they have an interest, but we run a sort of independent trust for the program. And I think the important thing perhaps to say about the program in a very overall way is we are interested in people who are very high level academics and will thrive at Cambridge, but our main mission is to build this global network of future leaders and who are really committed to improving the lives of others. So we'll get into some of those details, but I just thought I'd give you the overview first. Quickly, who's eligible? Again, the good news is it's very open. So citizens of any country except the UK, and if you're applying to Cambridge for one of these courses, so it's any full-time graduate program at Cambridge. So the PhDs, 3 to 4 years. Very occasionally there's an MSc MLit, which is essentially a 2-year research degree, and then any of the masters. There are a couple of the masters which are not included in our program. So the MBA, for example, I think is the main one, and the MPhil, just because they have particular fee arrangements. And the other thing is there's no age limit. So we have applications and indeed scholars who have come right out of university and quite young. We've had people who are a little bit further in their career. We've had people who have families. So it's very broad, it's very open. So I think that's the headline for this. So in terms of what we can offer, again, as Helen said, these are full cost scholarships. And in the case of Gates Cambridge, it covers the university and the college fee, which is combined, and you don't have to worry about that. You never see it. It's just sort of an internal transfer, but it means that you're not having to pay for those. We have a pretty generous living allowance, and it's £17,500 for 12 months at the moment, slightly less for the shorter courses. And that will get you through all the things you need. I did see there were some questions about living costs, so we can talk about that in a bit. And that will be between 9 and 12 months for the master's courses, because they are slightly different lengths, and up to 4 years for the PhDs. We have an airfare at the beginning, airfare at the end, so we can get you in and out, and then visas and any associated costs. So there's really very little that you kind of have to pay for. It's an all-inclusive package. And when you get to Cambridge, and if you get a Gates Cambridge scholarship, you'll find that you have extra discretionary components which you can apply for. So help with cost of bringing up children if you have them here, and academic development such as conferences and that sort of thing. So this is all in full detail on our current scholars page on the website, so you can dive into that. Now, I think the important thing about the Gates Cambridge scholarship is it's very the idea of community is really big. We have about 240 scholars in Cambridge at any one time. It's a very diverse, active, very passionate community. There's lots going on. It's you know, there's lots going on at Cambridge in general. So there's plenty of things to do at your college and department and other places. But if you become part of the Gates Cambridge community, there's enormous amounts going on, you know, led by the Scholars Council in lots of ways. So that's our student government, and they have they put on events from an orientation in September, which we're figuring out how we will do virtually this year, because pandemic tells us that we can't do that in person, all the way to graduation celebrations and everything in between. So there's some really big events and some small events, and there really is something for everyone. So it's a very busy calendar of activities, and it's very inclusive as well. There's a physical hub in the scholars room, so there's a physical space for engagement with the scholar community, and indeed we've had a couple of really interesting projects spin out from conversations. Simprints is an example where they've gone off to do some really interesting digital technology for improving the lives of others from that room. And then we have a professional development program, again spearheaded by the scholars, funded by the trust, called Learning for Purpose, which adds a kind of non-academic pillar to your experience as a Gates Cambridge scholar. And then beyond Cambridge, we are only 20 years old or 20 years young, but we do have a really impactful and engaged alumni community all over the world. And so you become part of that the moment that you graduate, and you continue to be part of that for life. And that's sort of, that brings the whole journey together. You know, you're an applicant, you're at Cambridge, and then you're part of the alumni association. So here are the sort of some of the nuts and bolts. Most of this is on our website, so I'm going to keep this pretty swift, but I think it's worth telling you a few of the key bits, and then I'll talk about making the sort of best possible application. So thankfully, others have said, talked to all about this in a very sort of detailed and eloquent way. So as everyone has said, you apply for admission to the university, a graduate application form, using the graduate application form for admission, for college membership, and for funding. And within the funding, you apply for all sorts of funding, as Helen and both Rachels have said. And within that, you apply specifically for a Gates Cambridge scholarship as one of the many opportunities in there. So when you've done the application, that all goes in. But what we're asking for at the Gates Cambridge angle is certain criteria that we use to select, and that's very linked with the university in the sense that you know, intellectual ability, as all speakers have said, you know, it's really important that there's a very good sort of link and connection between your skills, your background, and your experience, and what Cambridge offers, and that there's a really tight link there, and you will thrive at Cambridge. So I won't talk about that in any more detail because I think it's been covered very well so far. The three other elements for Gates Cambridge that are really important are choice of course. Now, this does tie in again with the above criterion and what other speakers have said, but this is also important to convince us at Gates Cambridge that you have really researched your course, that you know there's a good link. So for example, as previous speakers have said, if it's a PhD, you know, there's a resource there. It may be a potential supervisor, a lab, a bit of equipment, an archive, a library, or a combination. So that's for the PhDs. For the masters, it's really important to convince us that this will be a genuinely transformative master's year for you. You know, there's no point in just coming for a master's and just because it's a nice idea. We want to be convinced that right now this is the right master's for you. You need to know all about that master's degree, what the taught elements are, what the research, you know, how your skills fit to it, how you're going to thrive in Cambridge, and how you use it but beyond in your career. So you really have to sort of make that pitch to why that course and why Cambridge. So the other two things are very Gates Cambridgey, and we may get questions about this later, but leadership capacity and a commitment to improving the lives of others. These were things that were built in when the program was developed, because the idea was to ensure that when you took on a Gates scholarship, you were kind of committed to, in some way in your area, improving the lives of others and using your leadership and academic skills. Now, these are purposefully self-defined. So when you're an applicant, we want you to tell us how you think you have shown a capacity for leadership and how you have shown a commitment to improving the lives of others and how you will in future, because you'll all have different backgrounds, different narratives, different ways of, different experiences. And I think it's really important that those two are self-defined by the applicant. And then we purposefully interpret those in a very broad way. So we're not necessarily looking for someone who's, head of a sports team or something. That's neither good nor bad. It's just a case of, what is your story? What's your trajectory? How can you convince us that you're meeting these criteria? I'm sure we'll get questions on this later, so I will move on. And importantly, I think we have such a diversity of scholars. There really is no one template. You can see from our news and our directory the breadth and depth of our scholars on all sorts of metrics, and it's important that for our community, and I think Helen put it eloquently about the need for multiple voices, multiple experiences, multiple backgrounds to these very sort of difficult problems and to research and all the things that Cambridge offers and beyond. So I think there's what probably binds everyone are these 4 criteria. That everyone's very intellectually bright. They knew exactly why they want to come to Cambridge, and they have a capacity for leadership and an interest in improving the lives of others. Beyond that, it's very wide ranging. So I think that's an important point to make. So these are the 2 specific Gates Cambridge elements to the application. So as Rachel, both Rachels have said, there's parts of the application which you have to do for admission, and in some cases that's all you have to do for some funding as well. We at Gates Cambridge asked for 2 specific things. One is a statement from you explaining in 3,000 characters, which is about 500 words, why you think you meet the criteria of the Gates Cambridge scholarships. And again, I'm not going to get into the detail of that right now. I'm happy to take questions, but I think it ties back to the previous points about self-determining how you perceive those criteria and how they apply to you. And I think so that's your opportunity to shine, to say why you think you meet Gates Cambridge criteria. Similarly, we ask you, and this is all part of the form. In the form, you'll be asked to give the details of a third referee, I should say. And this is a Gates Cambridge referee, and that will then send a link to that referee to say, what you can see on the screen, please give your assessment of the suitability for the Gates Cambridge scholarship. I'll put that in bold. And then we ask those sub-questions. It's really important that you choose your referee wisely and that you brief them, and I'll come back to this in a minute. And this is not a third academic reference. It's a specific reference for the Gates Cambridge scholarship and those 4 criteria which I mentioned before. And so those are the things. We'll come back to those momentarily. So we have application deadlines are really, for anyone listening, I expect, unless you're a US citizen based in the US, it will be one of 2 deadlines for funding, and these are sort of hot off the press. I don't think they're quite released yet on the graduate study website, but they will be soon. So it'll either be early December or early January, depending on your course, and all that information will be on the deadline page on the graduate studies perspectives. So I think very briefly, I want to just talk about how we select, because we've had a few questions about this and I've tried to visualize this for you. Basically, we have a lot of applications, but people are applying through the university. And the first thing that happens is we send those applications to each department saying, these are the people that have applied. Tell us the very few people who you would like to nominate. And so what happens is we get the departments do a very sort of quite tough top slice, saying these are the very few people that we think we would like to nominate. They're high scoring academically. They know why they want to come to Cambridge. We're convinced they can do this course, and they meet the other Gates Cambridge criteria. So that's the first bit, and that's probably that's a very top slicing. We then look at those top sliced applications, and we have shortlisting committees to review those in those 4 areas, and they look at those on paper again for all of the 4 criteria. And then finally, should you get through to this point, which is highly selected, if you get through to interview, which is very impressive, we then have interviews to about 20-25 minutes to have conversations with people about all the criteria, how they fit. There'll be some, we're quite transparent about the interview process. It's on the website, you can see it quite detailed, but there are certainly, it's not a walk in the park. It will be challenging, but hopefully it's a conversation, and it will always try to bring out the best in you for that interview. Now, some quick tips before we finish up. I realize I'm already over time. I think Rachel put this much more succinctly: research your proposed course, and research it some more, and then probably research it a little more. So I won't sort of dive into that again, but I think that's a strong message. I think also for admission and funding, and specifically against Cambridge, be really clear why it's that course at Cambridge. It could be any course anywhere. So think about really critically and objectively, why am I coming to do this course at Cambridge specifically? And if you can make a strong case that to yourself and to others, I think you're in a really good position to make a case for admission and funding. Gates Cambridge is just one of many funding bodies at Cambridge. There is actually an enormous amount of funding, albeit it's not in one place, but we're trying to kind of umbrella it, as Helen says. And it's important that you apply for as much as possible and everything you're eligible for, really. So a lot of that is doable by the application form, simply by filling it in. Other things like Gates Cambridge and the Cambridge Trust, you have to, and some of the research councils, you have to do some extra work on the form. And then there are some pots of money which have external forms, and hopefully the graduate study website will guide you to those, as is put there. Referees, you will have certainly 2, potentially 3 referees. If you're applying to Gates Cambridge, or anyone, just engage with those referees early, choose them wisely, think about why you want them to be your referees, brief them about Cambridge, about your research, about your masters, about your plans, about why Cambridge. Importantly, if you're applying to Gates Cambridge, really brief your Gates Cambridge referee about the program. Send them links, send them a summary, whatever it is. Busy people, but what that third reference can't be is another academic reference. It will be enormously unhelpful, and they need to really be explaining why with knowledge about the program and examples about why you fit with the program. Draft your application early. I think this is, draft it early and get input from others. This is really helpful. I think Helen's mentioned this as well. Anyone that might be useful to give you some external purchase and sort of be a critical friend, that's a very helpful thing to have. And then deadlines. 2 things: ensure you know which one it is. So when you choose your course, it will tell you. It has a countdown timer on the application, but don't work to it sort of 11:59 p.m. on that day. Factor in some time beforehand. Life gets in the way, technical things happen, pandemics. So I think just budget in some time, and don't just work till right to the last minute. So those are some tips. I'm sure there are other things that we could say. I'm conscious that time is running away with us. I will just leave this slide here. I'll come back to this in a minute, but this slide here is just some of our scholars. It's 6 of the many, many more African scholars that we have, but I just thought it'd be interesting for you to have a little sort of glimpse into the world of Gates Cambridge scholars from Africa. I think that's all I probably have to say, or have time to say now, David. So hopefully that all came across okay, and I'll hand back to you, and thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Jim. That's really succinct, and I'm happy that you also tried to address some of the questions that we already have here. So what we're going to do now, we've got like 20 minutes approximately to take on just questions. And out of this, I'm just going to grab 3 minutes to kind of play a video that summarizes basically everything that Jim has said about Gates Cambridge, and also put forward the faces of some of the students, both Caribbeans, Africans, and people from other places. And you hear from them and see the kind of research they are doing. And that will kind of help to intensify everything that we'll be saying. So once the video is done, then all the speakers will be back on to take your questions. Thank you.
How can we best tackle food insecurity in Africa?
How can we address some of the most pressing sustainability challenges?
How can computer simulations improve treatments for some of the most serious diseases affecting human health?
The Gates Cambridge scholarships are a perfect fit with the university's mission, which is to contribute to society through learning, great teaching, and outstanding research.
Since the first class in 2001, the Trust has awarded more than 1,600 scholarships to outstanding students from 104 countries. And across the world, 1,200 alumni are making an impact in a wide range of fields.
By attracting great students from all around the world from vastly different backgrounds, the Gates Cambridge scholarships enhance our community's diversity and enrich our pool of talent. These women and men are primed to go out into the world and develop innovative solutions for some of the world's greatest problems.
To tackle food insecurity in Africa, we need to invest in agricultural research and technical capacity, including for small-scale farming of staple crops such as rice. I'm studying how different fungi interact with the roots of rice plants and how we can exploit this interaction to develop more dependable varieties with higher yields.
How can we address some of the most pressing sustainability challenges when resources are scarce, time is short, information is limited, and decisions are extremely urgent? I've been working with individuals and organizations trying to find very unconventional solutions to some of these most pressing sustainability challenges.
I studied protein folding, which is the process by which proteins adopt their unique functional shapes. Through computer simulations, we are able to gain microscopic insights into this process and understand why certain proteins do not fold properly, leading to diseases such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. We can also identify potential targets for drugs. Although Gates Cambridge is a prestigious scholarship at one of the world's leading universities, the program is very much about engaging the wider world. My own contribution has been to set up a mentoring program for Caribbean students who want to apply for scholarships like Gates Cambridge, and the community has been incredibly supportive of this work.
Gates is much more than just a funding scheme. Differently from most scholarship schemes, it provides an environment where students can interact on a daily basis and can come up and cross-fertilize their projects and learn from one another.
I think the value of the Gates scholarships is that everyone who graduates comes away with an incredible network of both friends, relationships, and also a professional network that they can draw upon for the rest of their lives.
We're looking for graduate students from across the world in any subject, students with outstanding academic achievements, a strong commitment to improving the lives of others, and leadership ability. Cambridge has outstanding facilities, and if your field of study is a good fit with Cambridge, the scholarship can make a significant difference to your future and launch your career.
The scheme has already built a global network of leaders who are not only great ambassadors for Cambridge, but I hope will take our mission to heart to contribute to society and go out there and make it happen.
All right, welcome everybody. That's awesome. So just like I was saying, although this video we've played is just talking about Gates Cambridge, but this is actually what every funding body around Cambridge, including Gates Cambridge Trust, considers. Okay, so it's now time for us to take questions. I'm going to try a bit to take some of the questions that have been submitted, as well as look at some of the ones that people have been popping in here. So feel free to continue to pop in those questions while we address the ones that we have here. I don't know where to start really. Okay, so maybe I could start with this that has something to do with funding, because we probably have 10 minutes really. Okay, there's a question here that says, in terms of funding, what and what is used to make decisions for funding? Would I expect an interview or something? I guess this has actually been mentioned. Yeah, maybe this is not a good question. This has already been mentioned during when Jim and Helen was talking. Okay, this is really a good one. So will COVID likely make it more difficult to secure a scholarship at Cambridge? I think this person is probably looking at the fact that if COVID has affected funding partners who are no longer able to support, will it make it like the number of scholarships that is being offered, is it going to decrease? And if that decreases, then it probably makes it more difficult to get in. So what are your thoughts on that, Helen and Jim?
It's a very good question. Funding, there's enormous pressures on funding. We do rely for a large part of our funding from investments, and global markets are affected. It's not entirely clear how, but I mean it's not. It's the income we receive from our endowment is under pressure. We've also had to give additional funding to our current students because they have had, not all, but many of them have had their research or study disrupted. So they're going to need extra time. So there is pressure, but there is also a heightened awareness of the need and value of scholarships. So already, in very early days, but already donations from former students and other sources have come in to help current students in distress. And I do think that why I spoke about the pandemic is that it will affect everything, and it will affect scholarships. I think that the diversity necessary to really properly address complex issues depends on Cambridge being able to recruit the best students from anywhere, any discipline, any country. And to be able to do that effectively, we need to give financial support. So it's a good question. It's definitely under pressure. I do think that it's going to be a priority for fundraising. You saw the Vice Chancellor in the Gates video, how important he thinks scholarships are. So don't have an easy answer, but you know it's not. It's definitely, I tell you, it is definitely not a reason not to apply.
Quite right.
We haven't restricted the number of places of awards that we've made this year. We have made some very hard decisions about drawing on our reserves as a trust, but we do have reserves, and we have drawn on them. So don't be put off from applying. There will be scholarships. There will be an alteration of some sort, but I can't see a restriction.
I would echo all of that. I think Helen said that perfectly. I would agree 100%. I mean, from the Gates Cambridge angle, we're slightly different in the sense that we're a single scholarship with a single endowment, and as large as it is, you know, we're not immune from what's going on in the world. You know, so we offered 80 scholarships for the people coming in this year. I think we're still yet to determine the exact number for 2021, but I think like Helen said, we've also been supporting our current scholars to make sure they can finish. So we're keen that we're still a generous scholarship supportive and make sure people get through our system, and that we're offering as many awards as we can. We haven't had detailed conversations yet, but I don't think there'll be any major changes, but that's still under discussion. But the headline, Helen's got it right. There's no reason not to apply. There's plenty of funding available, and just make that application.
All right, thank you, really good. Okay, I'm just going to, there are two questions. I think these people who have asked this question probably joined late. In case you're joining late, this program is strictly for graduate courses. So masters and PhD, not just only PhD or only masters. And then this other person who's asked about family, probably also joined late. It depends. I don't know where this is going. If you are trying to say if your scholarship would cover your family or whatever, Gates, Cambridge, I think Jim can talk about that, and he already mentioned that already. And usually, like Helen mentioned, this scholarship letters, the award letter will tell you everything that is covered.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have a problem with that.
I mean, we've been very lucky to sort of, just on that front quickly, we've been very lucky to sort of, because we're a single scholarship, we just made that decision, and we do have sort of substantial funding for people with children, not partners, because they can work if they come and get a visa, but try to make sure we're as open as possible. Yeah.
I'd like to encourage married ladies to apply.
Quite right.
It isn't easy to find the means to support your family, but people do, and please apply.
Okay, before I run the other way, I think this would be for Rachel.
So we don't look for GRE for chemistry admission. It's not something we require, so there's no problem. We're just interested in your degree results.
All right, great. So there is another question here that was submitted. It said, what are the weighting factors for certificates, research proposal, personal statements, references, and all that? It would be nice to have an idea of these weightings if they exist. It will help one to know what is actually relevant during the application. So I don't know where to begin.
I think I saw that, and I think there's mention of Gates in there. So why don't I take it, and then if anyone wants to chip in.
Yes,
in short, there sort of isn't a weighting really. So what we're looking at is the whole application. So I think one thing to perhaps mention or confirm is that when the scholarship when the funding bodies are looking at these applications, and when the selection committees get together, they're looking at the whole application. We're not just looking at your scholarship bit. We're looking at your application for graduate admission. We're looking at your case for the course. We're looking at anything you put in the funding section, and all of the associated paperwork. The transcripts, the references. In the case of Gates, the third reference, and then any kind of written work that you've put together. So we have a full package, and I think for funding, that's what we will do. We look at that across the piece. The university has its own sort of intricate internal ways to sort of assess that at the academic level, and that feeds into us, which is very useful. But certainly at Gates, we don't sort of we won't say 20% this, 30% that, or it's equal. We look at the whole package and use our criteria.
All right, great.
I would echo that. I would say put your full effort into every aspect, because every aspect of the application is used. It'll be used in different ways. One thing I might say then, if you're thinking about how to sort of think about, if you're thinking about how your application will be received, it will be read by people expert in your field, and also people who are not expert in your field when it comes to funding. It varies across scholarships, but almost all scholarships require an assessment of by a broader panel of either academics or others, if other qualities are being assessed. So it's a difficult thing to do, but make sure that the way you present is appealing both to those who are expert in your field and those who may not be, and may even be from a different discipline.
All right, so that is a good one. And yeah, this other question, if I had a scholarship to do my first semester, can I apply for this again?
Yes, I think it's a short answer.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, so I will move to another question here. I think that is still under Gates. As I say, I would like to apply to Cambridge and compete for the Cambridge Trust Scholarship. However, in 2018, when David visited my school in Nigeria, I remembered some of the examples of the things that people who got Gates did that David shared. Some of them involve funds that we can't imagine having access to in Nigeria. Is there a way to consider the fact that the scale of our projects might not be as big as those in the US and UK, and consider us for what we truly have access to?
Great question. I think the short answer is yes. The slightly longer answer is, you know, I think, first of all, I would say every Gates scholar I've met from everywhere was sort of almost shocked they got the scholarship. They thought, well, I couldn't possibly get this because, you know, all the people that have gone before them were just so amazing. And I think, you know, the humility in the community is quite something. So yes, we are selecting people, you know, a very impressive group of people, naturally, because that's the aim of the scholarship. But I think that, you know, in particular, when we do the major international round, you know, we're very aware of the opportunities that people have from different parts of the world. But equally, I think it's the key here is that if anyone's getting to the point where they've been nominated by departments to Gates Cambridge, what they're needing to show really is that they've made the most of the opportunities that have been presented to them. You know, of course, if they don't have certain opportunities, you can't, you know, you can't make them. But, you know, there's certainly people from all over the world, and including countries in Africa. Our African scholars have made excellent use of what they have, and they've certainly perhaps been restricted in some ways. So I think that, you know, they've you know, that is recognised that people make you know, the best of their opportunities, and that comes across in their application. I do think we can suffer at Gates Cambridge a little bit from the kind of how indeed prestigious it is, how indeed amazing the scholars are. But I think, you know, like I say, most of our scholars never thought they would get to this place. So I think it's important to make the application, make your case, whatever it is. You know, don't worry about what other people are doing. Make your case and explain, you know, what you've been able to do with your time so far.
All right. So this question has been answered. Yes, it does. You just need a single application. And this other one, is it a must for scholars?
No, you don't have to. You can actually indicate that you're going to be doing a language assessment in the future. And I personally would advise that you don't necessarily do it before you apply, because it's costly. It's quite difficult at the moment. Obviously, if you are made an offer of admission, you will need to meet the requirements. So if you're not a native English speaker, getting this done as soon as possible is quite important, but you don't need to have it before you apply. And as far as I'm aware, departments don't really consider the language. That's not something we're worried about. We're worried about what you know and what you can do.
Okay, so I will take just 3 more questions because I saw some questions I wanted to just point out. The first here from the submitted question said, in the event that I know Rachel has talked about this, but it said, in the event that I fail to get a response from potential supervisors, what would you suggest I do to maximize my chances of being offered admission?
So again, I think if you find a couple, 2, 3 supervisors that you're interested in, contact them all at the same time, but make sure each of your email is very focused to what they're doing, because it's not a good idea just to sort of send out a blanket email to everybody. Unfortunately, some academics are very busy. They're not very good at responding to emails. If you're really worried and you haven't heard back from any of them, it's always worth perhaps contacting the department administrator, because they might be able to chase it up and find out and give them a prod, and hopefully they will respond. And as I say, there's nothing wrong with sending a reminder, but it's not a good idea to keep pestering them with emails, because that will just annoy them.
Yeah. So then there's this other question. We say, what is the acceptance rate, especially for chemistry students?
Okay, so roughly speaking, we had for October, we've had something like 400 applications, and that's PhD and MPhil. So we only offered 2 courses, and we have a CDT, so that covers the 3 courses essentially. We made something in the region of just over 100 offers, 110, 120 offers. And in reality, that will actually probably translate to coming in something like 50 to 60 PhD students, 20 to 30 MPhil students. And we have a number of places on the CDT, but that's something that's is a new course, and we've only got a few places on that at the moment.
Okay, so
I don't be put off though. You know.
Oh no, absolutely don't be put off.
You only need one place. You know.
Absolutely, so and actually that's about 25% success. Yeah. I think probably getting an offer about 25%, and that's not bad.
I just to briefly chip in on this. I think I would again. I think this is the highlight of the whole thing. Is it just applies is the message for everyone. But I think it's really easy to get caught up in stats, and I often get questioned about this, particularly at Gates Cambridge, because the numbers seem eye-watering, but in reality they don't quite represent. It's a lot of numbers, and actually. They very rarely mean anything substantive, and so I think if you apply and make your best application, the very worst that can happen is if you don't get an offer that year. You've spent time honing your thinking about what you want to do with your career. It's a really good personal and professional development process to go through making an application for graduate study. It's really it's a really positive and useful process. So whatever the outcome, it's something I think to be embraced regardless of the outcome.
Absolutely, and I think Helen mentioned this. If you've applied for several courses at different universities in the world, you may not get your master's place at Cambridge, but there is the PhD. So maybe go and do your master's somewhere else, then apply for your PhD afterwards, and you'll already have built the weight in your application because you'll have had an experience somewhere else. You'll have more grades, you'll have more research experience. It will all be in your favor.
Yeah. Again. Oh no, not this. Sorry. Yeah, I have to pop this because even in the form, people have been asking about minimum requirements, their class of degree, and all that. So I don't know if you can chip in something on that.
I would say it's difficult. It's not impossible, but basically your prospective supervisor would have to make an academic case for your entry. So they would have to be really convinced that perhaps your grades were unexpectedly low because of mitigating circumstances, or that you have great potential, you've done other things since that may have raised your standard of, perhaps you've done a research job for a year, for 2 years, that those things would have built your capacity and your capabilities and your knowledge. So it's not impossible, but it is hard. And I think it does give you're coming from behind, if you like. But it's not impossible. But I wouldn't submit an application unless you've actually been in contact with a supervisor and they've said, I really want you to come. You have some special skill. Maybe you've worked in industry and that you've got something to bring to the program that was totally unique. And then it might be possible. So, unless you've got the support of a prospective supervisor, I wouldn't try it. Go and get another degree somewhere else, a master's degree, and build up your academic profile that way.
Okay. And then is there, just following on that, is there anything like a minimum requirement really for Cambridge Postgraduate?
Yeah, that's on the graduate study page. I think there's an equivalency about minimum entry requirements for each country. So that's on graduate.study.cam.ac.uk.
Yeah, I think generally speaking, it's a 2-1, generally speaking, across the board.
Okay, so this is the final question. After this, I'm sorry, I can't take more because we already overrun beyond 6. So the final question I'm going to take for today is, how feasible is it to defer admission and funding?
It's very easy. If you have an offer of a place and you have an offer of funding and you need to defer entry because, say, there's a pandemic, which we're actually going through right now, you can defer your entry to January or April if your course allows. So it will depend. If it's a taught MPhil you're going to do, that might be more difficult because there'll be certain taught courses you need to attend. There'll be certain deadlines that you won't meet. But in principle, if you have an offer of a place and you've got funding and you need to defer, and you can defer because of the course, that's not difficult. The funding will move with you.
I just to chip in on that, if there's time, I think so. I know. So I think the answer from Gates Cambridge is we have historically allowed people to defer for up to a year if there's a good reason to do that, and the funding can carry over, and they need to get admission again to the course in exactly the same arrangements. My understanding is the university is trying to encourage people to come and not defer if there's no need. So there's a particular at the moment set of arrangements for this year where people are encouraged to come or start their course from where they are maybe, and then there's only a sort of certain range of reasons really that they'd like people to defer because they'd like people to start their courses. How that evolves, we will see. But I think you can find information on the university's coronavirus FAQ page. That's kind of fully up to date on that. But in general, we have allowed deferrals in the past.
All right, so I guess to that, I have to call it a day today. It's been awesome having all of you to kind of engage with our audience today. And before I sign up, I would like to remind you that tomorrow, when Helen was talking about the specificity of scholarships, she did mention about some scholarships that are directed to some countries and all that. So tomorrow, our first speaker is going to be speaking on one of such scholarships, which is directly meant for Africans, so the Cambridge African Scholarship. So the director of the program will be talking, and then later on, Hannah is going to come on board and tell you about the entire collegiate system that we have here. Then after that, we follow the Hannah's talk, the question and answer, of course, and then we'll bring about 8 different student panels who have different scholarship from different Gates Trust, Cambridge Trust, some governmental scholarships, some college-based scholarship, to come and share their experience with you about what they did, what works for them, how they approach their scholarship application, their admission to Cambridge, what they think they've done in the past to prepare their path and their journey to Cambridge. And so I hope to see all of you there tomorrow. And for that, I will say thank you very much, and thanks to all our speakers.